Okay, I think we're going to go ahead and get started. So hi, everyone. My name is Sophia Pascuzzo. I am the Customer Marketing Associate here at Arr Solutions. A few things before we get started. All mics are turned off for this webinar. So if you would like to ask a question, please use the Q&A feature at the bottom of the screen. And we will try to answer all questions throughout or at the end of the presentation. Today we welcome Brad Dove, an account executive at Beanworks AP Automation. He works with clients to better understand their AP workflow with the goal of minimizing the time clients spend on each step. And with that, I'm going to hand everything over to you, Brad.
All right, cool. Thank you. My name is Brad. I'll be walking everyone through the webinar today. So yeah, you'll hear the name Beanworks being thrown around, but of course we're also known as Sage AP Automation. So if I slip up and start saying Beanworks, I'm still talking about Sage AP Automation today. So it's all about eliminating friction in your accounts payable workflow, how to make life easier. And you guys are stuck listening to my voice for the next little bit. So there we go. Next slide. That's my pretty face. And my mom says that I'm beautiful, so I'll take that. All right. So the outline of today's webinar, kind of go over some quick general research first, and then of course the different steps in your guys' workflow. So POs, invoices, payments, expenses, and then some Q&A. So feel free to fire away any questions as we're going through the webinar in the Q&A. And we'll try to make this as interactive as possible. So first, let's jump into kind of the basics here. So really the state of accounts payable research. So as we are doing our studies and talking to people all day, every day in accounting and finance, we actually ended up surveying 600 people, or finance professionals, that is. Of course, working in accounts payable and those leadership positions in North America. So for companies that typically employ, 100 to 5,000 people at their company. So that's kind of the bread and butter of who we work with. So of those 600 finance professionals surveyed, 83% said that AP automation is their top investment priority for their business. So 83%, pretty wild number there. That stat really shows how much kind of return on investment and value AP automation, getting rid of that boring kind of day-to-day manual steps in your process, and why it's a priority. So what are some of the biggest concerns when we're talking to folks? So really, number one concern for finance teams during the pandemic had been the risk of fraud and abuse. So, the economic upheaval led to a flurry of unusual financial transactions, expedited orders, changing banking information, new payment methods, that urgent request coming from the CEO. It might have raised eyebrows in the past, but then all of a sudden that seemed kind of normal during the pandemic. So it just opened up a lot more room for error and risk. So, really the first part there, the part of the problem is the continued reliance on paper. So relying on paper, of course, is going to result in delays. Really now, without having that digital access to AP and those remote capabilities, most accountants are actually forced to go, to the office during the pandemic. I actually remember talking to a doctor who came to us and was literally going back and forth between offices, getting checks signed. And you can imagine, obviously, a doctor should be spending their time doing other things than AP. The other big concern out there that we hear is overtime in accounting. So, being stuck on a Friday evening in the office still when you want to go and maybe have a drink with your friends or just be with your family. It's respondents mentioned, they've been working extra hours since March 2020. So we're into 2022 now, and there's still those overtime hours being done, of course. So the classic closing month end on time, trying to get financial reports ready. The finance professionals there, of course, have multiple reasons why they're working that overtime. So then let's take a deeper dive into each of these. Alrighty, so addressing that first challenge there, so the fraud and abuse. So 79% of companies who have implemented AP automation say now they are effective at flagging potentially fraudulent billing and or payments. So Sage AP automation helps customers reduce the risk with features like automated approval routing. So now no longer needing someone to sit there and manually choose who this goes to. You can just click a button and you can forget about it and just have actual structured rules in place. Now, next, of course, that paper-based process can be eliminated with automation, of course, being the most obvious one there. So Sage AP automation pulls in invoices, ideally directly from like an email or something like that. And 82% of the data entry can be automated by what you'll hear. OCR basically is a fancy term for saying our tool is able to pull the information off the invoice for you. So it reads the actual image of the invoice. And regarding the issue of finance employees working overtime, 76% of the companies that have implemented the AP automation tool, they reported back saying, of course, the obvious, increased productivity and less overtime for their accounting team. So we even interviewed a customer. This is a true story. We interviewed a customer last week in healthcare, and he said the best quote I think ever that we're going to give our marketing team. He said, "I got my wife back," and we're like, "Wait, what?" He's like, "Yeah, like I got an extra 10 hours a week. I'm able to go home, spend time, take her out for dinner, things like that." And obviously we're going to plaster that everywhere on our website because we couldn't believe it. We're like, wow, that's pretty cool. So there you go. Power of automation may even save your relationship. Didn't know you're coming on a webinar today for dating advice. So then let's go into POs. So moving on from the research, the first accounts payable module, of course, POs. Some people don't have POs, of course. It's recommended. It's a way to get ahead of an invoice before it shows up on your desk and you're like, what is this? And it's a way to forecast and budget what you guys expect to spend. So looks like we got a poll here. Now that we've talked about a couple of those challenges, I just want to run a quick poll. Just in the past few months, what's been everyone's biggest AP challenge, would you say? And if your biggest AP challenge isn't on the list, feel free, you can fire away in the Q&A. But everyone should be able to see the poll now up on their screen. So take a couple of seconds here. Just curious to see what the biggest challenge for you folks would be. All righty, let's see. So it looks like number one, approval process follow-up. So that's common for sure. Yeah, that sounds like the chasing back and forth, seeing what's improved, seeing what's still outstanding, what might be sitting on someone's desk or like in an email inbox. And then second place with the data entry and coding. And then looks like third, so identifying and managing errors. So maybe something got posted to the wrong GL, having to do journal entries, mess around with that. Cool, so that's interesting to see. So a lot of people here today, the chasing around of approvals and then that data entry. So then that's good to know. So for the common challenges, of course, with the procurement process, since we're just kind of starting here on the PO side of things. So some of the biggest concerns within this workflow have been around, of course, the manual heavy kind of procurement process. So papers flying around, and of course that back and forth approval on the PO side of things, let alone the invoice side of things. So problem is, of course, most businesses rely on an informal requisition process where employees can create their own shortcuts or systems, potentially, of course, making it hard for accounting teams to track their spend. So most businesses or some businesses don't even have a requisition process to lean on. So for those businesses, that will then lead to a lack of visibility, such as open purchase orders. So you don't have any. So now you actually don't know what your team is committed to be spending until that invoice actually hits your desk. And then you're probably asking, okay, hey, what's this for? Or unapproved purchases. So that can then disrupt your tasks like that month-end close. Without that formal kind of requisition process, employees can now go and buy goods and services without having that appropriate approvals in place. So then how can you actually fix this without using in-AP automation software? So number one, first of all, it is crucial to establish a formal requisition process with PO forms. So this means that the purchasing staff must issue a purchase order for every purchase made by the company. So as simple as just like a Word document, hey, fill this out if you want to buy, a laptop or something like that. And then that gets submitted to the finance team. So then once that formal requisition process has been laid out, you can now match those invoices to the POs. So now when that invoice hits your desk, oh, hey, I've seen a PO for this. I know what this is for. Yeah, it looks like it matches what was agreed to on the PO. And that's give you that extra little level of confidence, of course, to now enter it and pay it off. And then lastly, you can create an actual approval network to manage, department spend. This way, now that process should actually require employees to complete a purchase rec form. Then it's got to be approved, typically by that department manager. And then by doing that, the department manager is actually now taking responsibility for each purchase and understands now their spend and how that's actually going to affect the team and against, of course, their own budget at the end of the day. So teaching your team how to actually care about what they're spending, not just, oh, whatever, it's just finance's problem and we'll deal with it later. So if you did want to take this even a step further, you could, of course, consider, an automation solution. So now some of the benefits of automating that piece would be the customized purchasing and spending limits. So then you could potentially come up with now a spending policy for your team. So companies could create a formal purchasing process that controls, who's able to buy, what are you able to buy, how much can you spend. You can set limits. So if you did have, certain departments or projects or even vendors that you only want to spend a certain amount on, you can actually set those rules up in place to then control those types of purchases. Now, in addition to that process, of course, it eliminates double data entry. So by automatically matching POs to invoices, you can now actually have all that information onto the invoice, get it pulled off the PO for you, and you don't have to sit there and now re-enter all that information again on the invoice when it shows up. And then, of course, you can actually preview your budget and forecast through a central dashboard. So this is all about being able to measure, certain projects, budgets, departments, things like that, how those actual payments, invoices, and expenses are contributing to your overall, growth of your team, and of course the finances was what you guys care about. So quick little customer story here. Now, as you can read, of course, the quote on the screen, I won't repeat it up for you. But prior to implementing PO automation with us, so DreamPack, they didn't have a system to track a purchase order against an invoice at all. So really, Waleed over at DreamPack, as you can see there on the screen, the automation piece was critical for them, and it gave them the transparency that they didn't realize that they were missing. So now they actually know what's about to hit their desk before it shows up. So that's POs. Let's jump into the actual invoices now. So then this is probably a key piece, it sounds like, for a lot of you. So that invoice approval follow-up. So really the pandemic, of course, it brought a rapid switch to remote work. Manual processes still screwed up staff's ability to actually function while being remote. And then, the research really showed that finance teams had to visit the office during the pandemic to actually complete the tasks like getting invoices or filing invoices, even getting those physical signatures on invoices. So then businesses experiencing the slow invoice processing, they're typically stuck with the, that second place error that a lot of people mentioned today. So the manual data entry. So that comes out of the need to update the same data, potentially in multiple systems. The usage of those informal approval channels, such as emails, paper, obviously is a major contributor to slow invoice processing. And then with manual intervention involved in every step, it of course gets difficult to spot duplicate invoices. So one report found that 63% of businesses had received duplicate invoices. And then of those, 33% of them actually paid duplicate invoices and have to obviously chase the vendor and get your money back and deal with that. So let's see, how can we tackle those challenges without using AP automation? So first, to better manage and figure out how to get rid of that manual data entry and reduce those errors, you could install an OCR technology. So there are some very basic kind of OCR technologies out there that, again, it's just a fancy way to say it will do its best to read the image of the invoice. You can also go after some solutions that maybe target document management. So that could potentially help you speed up invoice approvals. So if your goal is to shift away from paper-based systems, you could turn to tools like PaperSave. They help accounting teams reduce their reliance, of course, on paper. That filing and cabinets, it's kind of like that shared drive that you could log into and everyone can have access to. So now these systems do support different areas of the invoice processing. And then of course, an AP automation software will target all of these challenges through one tool. So here's how, of course. So the AP automation uses, the AI powered data capture to extract invoice details, such as, of course, like amounts, due date, invoice date, vendor name, description, cost, quantities, all that fun stuff. So then it'll automatically flag those duplicate invoices in the system as well. So then you don't have to worry about potentially double paying or tracking them. And then last but not least, you've got the automated platforms, of course, they come with that built out internal approval system. So now it's going to allow you to track the entire approval chain in real time. So from when it was sent for approval, how long has it been sitting there with someone, the notifications, the requesting for backup pages to the point where it's been finally approved and paid. You can have full visibility on everything. All right, so one more little story here. So in the case of a golf club, so Minikata Golf Club in Minnesota, they're experiencing interruptions and completing like your classic, routine AP tasks. So everything was done manually. They were doing hours of data entry and the classic stacks of paperwork, filing cabinets, all that fun stuff, and it just becomes difficult to track. So 15 people were approving invoices every month, running into delays. This, of course, made it difficult to catch those duplicates. And then the big issue was that all the financial documents with sensitive information were on paper and actually stored in the physical facility itself. So what was critical for Minikata's club's AP team was really taking back some control, of course, over their financial processes and, the obvious tackling the issues such as the duplicate invoices. So then with the AP automation, the golf club was able to spot $10,000 in overpayments, including credits and duplicate payments. So that's pretty crazy, $10 right off the bat like that, just being able to have a structure in place. And then using Sage AP automation, managers were actually able to use the web and the mobile app to approve documents online. So we're all busy these days. We don't want to slow down the process. So if we're in the airport or, for this case, if you're at the golf course, you can still pull out your phone, approve some invoices, and away you go. So that's invoices here. So then jumping into the, of course, payments. So this, of course, was significantly affected by the pandemic as well. So many organizations are still experiencing challenges caused by low cash flow. I mean, talks of like recession and all that kind of fun stuff. Now supply chain disruptions, vendors are just changing their payment preferences, right? A lot of vendors are pushing back now, and they don't want to receive checks anymore. They want, ACH, or if they're of course overseas, wires. And then of course, the remote work conditions. So it's just pushing teams to consider switching what they're doing. So then in that recent study that we did with the 600 finance teams, or 600 finance professionals, I should say, we found 3 areas within payments that were severely impacted. So let's take a look at what that is. So the late payments being a huge factor. So on average, businesses in North America took as long as 58 days to pay vendors. So typically net 30 terms on an invoice. You can imagine 58 days now, you're running into potentially those late fees. This was up, 5.5% from the first quarter in 2020. Against, of course, this information that we got was recently here in 2022. So the average payment period was 55 days, and now it's up to 58. I'd be curious to know, maybe it's potentially in the 60s now. If we were to do this study again kind of today. So then it'll be interesting to see, of course, as we're going through these changes, and people are still struggling with, should we be hybrid, should we be remote, should we force people to be back in the office, how this will all affect it. So now, with that being said, the remote side of things, being able to have the remote access to payments. So 57% of those 600 businesses were unable to make payments while working remotely last year. So could assume that, reliance on the traditional or paper-based processes were to blame, as well as having to come into the office, right? Having to, maybe only one person has access to being able to log into the bank or manually enter in those invoices and approve them, and away they go. So then third, but not the least, is of course the big one here. Oops. Let's see. There we go. Risk of fraud. So really the risk of fraud here. So while keeping the financial engine running, accounting teams also, you guys got to be aware of those scams, right? Getting like text messages these days, emails, hey, like, can you go buy me some Apple gift cards? I've gotten that before. Or, that urgent message from what looks like to be your CEO. So vendors even saying, hey, can you change up my banking information? Your day-to-day, you're busy. I mean, it happens to all of us. Like, potentially you could be caught doing that as well. And then now that urgent request, right? Doesn't seem so crazy nowadays if people are all over the place. So it's making it a lot harder for AP teams to kind of catch on and identify those signs of what might be fraud. So even the most experienced teams, right, can run into some of these kind of common roadblocks that we're seeing. So how do we make sure it doesn't happen with you guys? So you can probably get the idea now. How can we fix it without AP automation? How can you, of course, fix it with AP automation? So considering, introducing these practices into your payments routine, this will make it at least a step in the right direction to be more secure and efficient. So separate the approval chain for both invoices and payments. So by separating roles, you'll hear like your auditor tell you, like segregation of duties. So for both approvals on the invoice and payments, that's going to reduce your chances for funds to be rerouted or otherwise, missent. So then if late or missed payments are your primary area of concern, it might be beneficial to actually explore a third party. So a third party such as Invoice Pay, who just recently got bought out. They're called Corpay now. So they'll actually track, update, maintain all of your payment information for your suppliers. They manage all of your vendor data and take on all the liability as well. So they take on 100% liability, meaning like they'll guarantee to send your payment to your vendor and then it reaches its destination. So that's one way to do it. Or you could also start using something as simple as like a vendor, banking change form to initiate the changes in vendor banking details. So when a vendor asks for their details to be changed, you could always ask, 2 or 3 questions to actually confirm the legitimacy of the request. So for example, like their last payment date, what their last invoice amount was, to make sure that it's definitely the vendor you're speaking with. And then last but not least, of course, you can train your staff on how to identify signs of fraud. So, those classic like phishing campaigns, you can have some fake emails sent out to test your team and, see how many people kind of fall for it, click on the link, or report it back to you. So invoices that maybe don't have vendor information, or maybe keeping an eye out for examples of something that's missing, like a phone number, or, this is like a Gmail versus a business email address. So things like that to keep out for and to train your team on what to look for. So now those changes are all good, of course. Can definitely implement them, as easy as today, tomorrow, creating like a vendor bank change form, something like that. But of course, now you could step it up a notch potentially too with automation. So then with AP automation, first and foremost, you can actually pay your vendors in their preferred method of payment. So whether that's, ACH, EFT, everything except Bitcoin is the easiest way to say it. We don't do crypto yet. So that's one way to do it. You can also automatically route your payments to your approvers. You could let the software now do all the chasing and the follow-ups. You don't have to do that anymore. And you can actually see quickly where potentially, bottlenecks might be happening, like a quick dashboard. If someone is a little bit slower, the tool can notify them daily, but as well keep track of, oh, hey, this person is a payment still sitting with them now for like 6 days, like what's going on? And you can ping them again if you want to. So kind of funny, a little bit of a weapon that your AP team can use. And then of course you can actually combat the risk of fraud by using that approval matrix. So setting up those rules, whether that's departments, locations, dollar amounts. Sometimes if you're a nonprofit, maybe you need to have multiple people approving your payments. So you can have that all done within the system. So then in terms of payments, so in the case of Arr, or AI, Arr, an organization for institutional research. So they are always on like colleges and college campuses, university campuses. So they were experiencing some major challenges, of course, within their AP departments. So the team was storing documents inside physical boxes. This, of course, is annoying. It makes for a great fort if you want to hide behind your desk. Just make a stack of boxes. I used to do that in my old job in accounting. But of course, that just causes more issues than just some extra cardboard boxes lying around with paper. So the invoice to payment processing was a week long. So that's to start. Payments were handled manually. So on a typical day, an AP clerk would enter the invoice, forward it to the director for review. After an email approval or paper signed off approval, checks are then printed, given to the CFO for signature. And then of course the checks are scanned for backup. Then you put them in an envelope, mail them. You get the gist. There's a lot of manual steps there. And the documents often get lost as well. So documents, back and forth between coworkers, and having to then recover those documents becomes a challenge during events like the audit season. So this little check mark there, just pretend that says a week-long process. So then in terms of Sage AP automation, so when Sage AP automation came in for Arr, so the software moved that AP cycle, of course, into the cloud and replaced paper with automation. So as a result of using Beanworks, the organization was able to fast track their AP process. So now they're only spending 2 to 3% of their day on payments, or payment related activities, meaning like typing in the payments into a bank. That's eliminated. Having to ping someone for approval now, that's like manually, that's eliminated. So then more than 50% of their vendors have actually moved to electronic payment methods such as ACH. So vendors are happier now. They receive their money faster, of course, and it's cheaper for you guys as well. You don't have to have all that back and forth of someone signing off on a check, sure, the envelope and the postage is immediately saved, but there's even the back and forth time that's spent there as well that's saved. And then the time spent filing has been saved as well. So that annual, tradition of hauling the 3 or 4 boxes per year, or for some people, it's 20 or 30 boxes per year over to the storage room, that's finally eliminated. You can get rid of that. No more dusty file boxes. So then instead of having to go through, the filing cabinets, you can actually have now secure online storage. Everyone can have access to it if you want to. And now it's all within a centralized system. So another quick poll here. What is your guys' primary method of payment? Do we still got lots of people on paper, cutting down trees, or maybe credit card is usually a popular one, so we'll see. Ooh, 71% paper checks. What's going on, folks? Come on, we're in 2022. Just kidding, it's okay. I'm not here to shame you. Interesting. So a lot of paper checks still, and then of course second place ACH and EFT, which is great. Yeah, we're human. We like our habits, and it's scary to let go of physically seeing a check on our desk, physically, being able to sign off on it and send it out in the mail. We like the smell of the stamps, and who knows, maybe some of you enjoy licking the envelopes, but I'm not here to judge. So from there, that's interesting. So a lot of paper checks still, which we already know now by going through. You could get rid of some of that stuff. So last but not least here, let's jump into expenses. So what this means is like your credit card receipts, your potentially employee reimbursements, or paying off like a corporate card. So issues with that traditional way of managing expenses and reimbursing employees is, of course, it's time consuming. So sifting through stacks of paper, those receipts, trying to verify the details, it takes up time each month. So filing and processing those receipts involve too many steps like printing, scanning, coding. So it's why 45% of CFOs, of course, say minimizing that admin burden and expense processing is actually their top priority this year too. So the next challenge is reducing the risk of expense abuse. So, I'm in sales. I'm probably the biggest culprit of this, as many other sales teams that maybe you guys have to deal with as well. Expense abuse, trying to say, they're taking out a client, things like that. So last year, 62% of businesses encountered out of policy expenses. So with so much detail involved in manually managing the day-to-day expenses, it just becomes hard to maintain the accuracy and whether things are within policy. So things just get pushed through just to keep on moving it along. And then last but not least, errors. So according to the Global Business Travel Association, on average, 1 in 5 expense reports actually contain errors. So there are a few, again, practices that can help you guys get in the right direction here. So first, you can start by managing expenses through a document management software. So this type of software actually lets you upload receipts and have some like basic approval workflows in place as well. So now maybe say that salesperson went out to that lobster and steak dinner, they have to actually route it to their manager first for approval and then come to finance. So you could actually catch a lot of out of policy expenses before it even hits your desk in finance. But then as well, you have the visibility on it in a system that's centralized, not just paper receipts or stuck in someone's email. Second, you can document or come up with an actual expense policy. A lot of companies I talk to, yeah, they don't even have an expense policy in place. So maybe start thinking about, should there be a policy to kind of manage our costs, and then get it signed off by employees. So that way you can actually get buy-in from everyone. And you could also design like a questionnaire if you wanted to base it off of what people want in the business, and just to make sure that the employees fully understand the policy. So that's one way to do it. And then last but not least there, so you can actually digitize the receipts immediately. So you can come up with a policy, even someone just take a picture off their phone and email it to like a central AP email that you guys have. So that way you have a digital copy right away. And then that way you can save it too, maybe on like a shared drive. And then you don't have to worry about receipts being misplaced or lost. And that way you just have it in one spot for you. So then of course, that's one way to do it. Other way to do it is with, an AP automation tool. So it's going to give your business ways to actually engage with employees and accelerate the expense management and the reimbursement, which of course, if you're doing reimbursements, employees always love it when they get their money back sooner than later. And that'll make them more than likely continue using a tool. So then allowing employees to actually submit their expense reports through, say, a website or a mobile app for reimbursements. And then once approved by the manager with like that automatic workflow, now your AP team can reimburse electronically, and now they're actually confident because it's gone through a workflow process. You could also flag expenses that exceed limits. So that can be customized based on department, budget, role, whatever it may be, like dollar threshold, of course. So then giving you even more control and visibility over your employee spend. And then last but not least, you've got your automated expenses can actually eliminate that double data entry. So by having the tool map your expense categories to actual GL codes, that's going to save your accounting team time from having to do that themselves. So that just gets done right away. And then now you guys don't have to worry about messing around with the coding. And then you're good to go. So again, back to our friend over at DreamPak. So yeah, Wally was the vice president over there. They're a beverage manufacturer, if people aren't familiar with DreamPak. So as you can see on the screen here, the quote. So employees being able to take a picture now of the receipt and just get it into the tool. It is able to be now stored. It's a clean audit trail as well. If you guys have to go through an audit each year, most people do these days, and then it's just all in one spot, so you don't have to worry about it anymore. Now, in terms of the 360-degree AP approach, giving you, of course, as much visibility as possible. So, I don't like to say 100%. I'm not that cocky. I like to say 99.9% visibility, just in case, because we're still human at the end of the day. So the finance solutions contributing to growth in the remote work area. Really, everyone's now looking for a one-stop shop, especially with kind of recession times coming up. People don't want to be going out and buying 4 or 5 different tools, of course, because now we become a little bit more price conscious. So just being able to go to one spot, that's going to do everything for us. It's going to save us not only our time in researching, but also, of course, our time and our money, by not having to train our team on 4, 3 different tools. So then making sure when you're looking for an AP automation software, when you do look for a solution, you do want to try your best probably to look for something that ties all of those functions just into one system. So like we discussed, right, the purchase orders, invoices, payments, expenses. That's how we do it here, of course, at Sage AP Automation. So that way, all the AP processes, all that data, it's stored in one system. There's no more loose spreadsheets and just random software shared by individual departments. All that information is going to actually flow seamlessly across those workflows and right back into your Sage financial system. So that way you have as smooth as possible an AP experience for all the accounting staff, whether your team is working, in the office or at home or, on the beach in Hawaii. So that's the AP side of things. Now, we do have a AR partner as well, or a sister company as well, so called YayPay. So a lot of teams nowadays are actually looking for, of course, AP, the money going out the door, but talking about AR, the money coming in the door is typically a little bit more exciting. So quick little blurb here, and then we do have something at the end for you guys as a giveaway. So a couple more slides here and a little giveaway, and we should have you guys on your way. So then as a result of the pandemic, of course, 93% of the CFOs are digitizing their operations, right? So not only accounts payable, but of course the AR as well. So the sister company, YayPay, got bought out essentially by Quadient as well. So that's like our parent company now is a big company based in France. So they bought both AP and AR automation. So people really do often forget AR is not as simple as just like go collect some cash from those unresponsive customers. It's really a spectrum of activities. So spanning, the credit to cash process, assessing customers' credit worthiness, fulfilling new orders, managing disputes. Maybe people don't want to pay your bills for some reason. So then what follows there is the challenge of collecting cash, managing payment process, verifying deductions, and actually handling cash application at the end. So a task that actually involves matching payments to invoices. So then businesses can't function, definitely can't thrive without having an AR professional on the team. I mean, that's the way you survive, is by having someone make sure you got the money coming in the door. So then debt ends up building up, right, with uncollected payments, and money isn't then available for like the worst case scenario, of course, like things like employee paychecks and being able to reinvest money into different parts of the business. So considering the critical importance of the AR team, it really is an injustice that they're kind of burdened with, such a convoluted and error-prone process. So they're constantly facing like that flow of incoming inquiries, receipts, requests, paper, voice, electronic forms, things like that. So it's really that ongoing stream of communication. So that's always kind of slowing them down there. So trying to keep it all kind of straight is quite a task, as you can imagine. And it's not to mention it's repetitive, it's exhausting, and potentially like boring, right? I mean, if you're doing the same thing all day, every day, and there's nothing new or a different challenge, we're human, we get bored, we want something different. So of course, there's a way to tackle this with potentially exploring, an AR tool. So really the key to YayPay's success and the customers is, again, that idea of a single platform that will be able to tackle all of your AR functions. So from the credit management, cash application, the credit to cash process within like a simple dashboard. It's just like a simple login. It gives access to now even your customers. So your customers can actually log in to a portal like this as well and actually see how their payments are being applied, and they can actually like pay their bills right into now your YayPay tool potentially. The reason being is YayPay actually will integrate seamlessly, again, with Sage, of course, but if not most or all financial systems. Your customer relationship management systems that you might be using. So like we use Salesforce, of course. So if you're using anything else as well, we can actually plug into that as well. And there's those billing systems, and that consolidates all that information into now just one tool like YayPay, versus having silos of having to log into 2 or 3 different tools to kind of pull that information out. So customers can customize the platform, figure out, okay, what's important to them, those workflows, how they want to communicate with their customers. So you can set up those different ways for that communication. So maybe you want to email smaller customers a certain way versus your bigger enterprise customers, how you want to collect cash from them. It may not be the same process across the board and who to prioritize. So then this, of course, means now you have more visibility, your productivity goes up, of course, like we all say, right? For any kind of software, efficiency, time saved. It's nothing new that you guys haven't heard if you looked at a software before. So then on average, companies actually do get paid 34% faster when they use YayPay. So that may not seem like much, but 34% faster adds up over time when you're getting cash in the door. And that now can trickle down into the business to move faster and to start investing into those higher priority tasks, of course. So that is the YayPay spiel on the AR side of things. Now, in terms of you folks for listening to my voice for 40 minutes, you guys do get this lovely Amazon gift card if you sign up for a demo. So, of course, there's a catch. Just click on the link or copy and paste this link, or we'll send out the link, I believe, in an email afterwards. So if you would like to see a demonstration of Sage AP automation, visit the link here that's on the screen. And once you've actually just attended a demo, we'll send you $50 saying, hey, thanks for coming to check us out and poke around in the Sage AP automation tool. And then if you are interested, of course, in learning a little bit more about both solutions, so like the accounts receivable YayPay, we will be hosting a webinar called How to Make Your Finance Team Recession Ready on Tuesday, August 23rd. So we'll send out a link afterwards to register for that one if you'd like to check out more of the AP AR webinar on August 23rd. And then, of course, if you got any questions, fire away at sage@beanworks.com. Google us, Beanworks, and poke around, or feel free, again, use that link and book a demo, and you guys will get that $50 Amazon gift card for showing up. You don't have to buy by any means. You can just come have a coffee on your lunch break, and you'll get $50 to go spend on your kids or on yourself. Treat yourself. Maybe a brand new wine rack or something. I don't know if you can get a nice wine rack for $50, but hey, you get something. And that's it.
Awesome. Thank you, Brad.
Cool.
We're going to open up the floor to questions right now, if we have any. And it looks like we do have a couple that are coming in. So the first one, which payment methods are supported?
Everything except Bitcoin is the easiest way. I always say it. So yeah, we can send every wire, ACH, credit card to your vendor for them.
Awesome. And then another one, what kind of customer support is included?
So customer support, we give you a dedicated support manager no matter what. That means you'll always have like a first go-to person to reach out to with any questions or extra training. And then you can, after you go live, so it typically takes, we'll get into that maybe afterwards if there's a question about it, 2 to 3 weeks to go live. But after you go fully live, you can choose maybe if you want like a faster support time as well. So we got some different tiers as well that folks can choose, like if they want kind of like a fast pass, but you'll have someone to kind of hold your hand during the whole time we implement you, as well as any questions afterwards. You'll have a go-to person to reach out to. That's actually based, here in Vancouver, where we're based in Canada, Vancouver, Canada. Sorry, because I know there's one in Washington.
Great, thank you. And another one, how long does it take to get set up?
Yeah, so 2 to 3 weeks is what I always tell people is a fair timeline. What that entails is 3 Zoom meetings. The first one will be integration, so plugging into Sage, testing invoices with you, making sure it all is pulling in the proper vendor lists and GL codes. So that takes about an hour. Your second Zoom meeting will be building out your approval workflows and adding in your different users. So that maybe takes an hour as well. And then the third Zoom meeting will be training. So that's typically an hour or 2, and we'll train the key finance people through the tool. So all in all, this is about like a 6 or 7 hour commitment for the customer, and then everything else is done by us in the back end. And you guys should be fully trained and good to go within 2 to 3 weeks.
Great. Okay, we don't have any more right now. I'll just pause for a few seconds to see if we have any last minute questions. Okay, I'm not seeing any. So I just want to thank everybody for attending today's webinar. We will be sending out an email with all the links and replay and slides from today in the next couple of days, and we hope to see you at our next event. Thank you.